welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 75 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing Chapter 1 of A Clash of Kings, that's Arya 1.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide you some additional information that will be particularly helpful if you are not reading along. How are you?
I'm all right. How about you?
I'm good. I'm reading the witty banter section now, and it's kind of got me just... The other thing I would like to say, actually, just as a sort of... I almost caused a classic blooper there, because I don't know if I wasn't concentrating, but where it says, we'll summarise what happened, I almost read, Simon will summarise what happened, which would have been really embarrassing, but I just caught myself at the last second.
And then outed yourself.
Yes.
You're reading the witty banter. Yeah, This is a, much like Martin not doing us any favors last week with how long the prologue is. He's not doing us any favors this week either with how short chapter 1 is.
This chapter, nothing happens.
No, really.
Nothing happens. It's incredible. I mean, that's what we were talking about at the end of the last book, is how like every chapter has like sort of like a real drive to it, but this one is kind of the exception.
Yeah.
We're really going to have to pad.
I think somewhere down in the notes
or we could let them off the hook with a 45-minute episode.
Right.
We could do that too.
Yes, we could. Yeah. But yes, it's good that we're recording tonight and not yesterday, because Sunday was rough for me in multiple ways.
Oh, I know what you're going to talk about now.
I'm just gonna say it was a rough evening. Within 5 minutes in the Steelers wild card game, first playoff game against the Cleveland Browns. Within 5 minutes, we had committed 3 turnovers and we're down 21 points. One of those turnovers being the very first play of the game, when the center snapped the ball over the quarterback's head into the end zone, and the Browns recovered it for a touchdown. Wow. First play. Not the second. Wow. First.
I have not seen any of this, so I really didn't know about it. So the Browns are notoriously bad.
Yes.
And the Steelers are kind of a powerhouse, and so this should have been comfortable ride. But you invited them into the playoffs by losing to them in the last round.
Right. We sat a bunch of players, and they squeaked out a 2-point victory over us. They had the Browns hadn't won in Pittsburgh since 2002, so it'd been a while. So I guess there's some hidden vigorish there. But the game was absurd. By the end of the first quarter, we were down 28-0 with 4 turnovers, all which resulted in touchdowns for the opposing team. So Ethan is he's on a ski trip right now, and he was trying to decide if he should night ski or watch the Steelers game. And after they went down by 14 points, he texted me and said, I'm going skiing. And I was like, good call. So halftime, like right as halftime started, he called. And I thought he was calling to lament about the Steelers game. So I answered the phone. I was like, tell me you didn't stick around and watch this. And he's like, Dad, I've got some really bad news. And I was like, someone's been in an accident or a ski accident or something. And he said, I got a speeding ticket. I was like, oh, gee, that's the way you set up your parents. You know, you set them up thinking, because I was like, oh, thank God, it's just a speeding ticket.
I went doing the most dangerous sport I could think of, Dad, and I got a speeding ticket.
I was so relieved that it was only a speeding ticket when I should have been like, you got a speeding ticket? What's wrong with you, man? So, yeah, didn't help the evening's mood, that's for sure, because that's going to be like multiple hundreds of dollars. So.
Yeah, speeding tickets are a real pain, but from experience, I can tell you, you don't want your son breaking his femur skiing. That would be worse. I would trade you in a heartbeat.
Lucas flashed through my mind when he said, I've got some really bad news.
I bet. Because 3 months of having to shower my 15-year-old son, whoosh. neither of us is the same.
Yeah. That definitely would have been worse. I'm sure you would have traded the speeding ticket for a broken femur.
I was going to tell you something. What was I going to tell you? Oh, my favourite interesting statistic of the day, I've got to credit Jimmy Kimmel with this. I saw this the other day on Jimmy Kimmel, is Yankee Candle.
Okay.
You know who Yankee Candle are?
Familiar.
They make candles.
Yep.
Yes. And their reviews have gotten worse and worse over the last year. And they've figured out why it is. It's COVID. Basically, if you
I know you're going with this. I think
if you break their reviews down into their scented and unscented candles, their unscented candles, their reviews have stayed steady, but their scented candles have tailed off, and it perfectly matches COVID cases.
Because people can't smell. I can't smell this candle.
Exactly, and that's what the complaint is. It's like, what's wrong with you people? These candles don't smell.
I was in your store, and then I sniffed every single candle in that store. Didn't smell one of them. Yeah. You know, it's funny you say that. A friend of ours, he and I were talking about his sister had just gotten her first COVID vaccine shot because she works in the healthcare industry.
Okay.
And she said that because she works in the healthcare, in a doctor's office, every morning she would get up and smell a candle to make sure she didn't have COVID.
Oh,
and one morning she got up, couldn't smell the candle, and went and got tested, and turned out she had COVID. So,
oh wow!
Luckily, she didn't write a review based on that day.
Scandal was fine for 2 weeks, and now it's rubbish.
So that was her like canary in the mine shaft type deal. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get down to business. How do we leave Arya? Last we saw of her, she was living on the streets of King's Landing, trying and failing to escape the city. She was present for, but thankfully didn't actually witness her father's execution, as Yoren of the Night's Watch prevented her from seeing the deed. Yoren then took her into an alley and brandished a knife.
Uh-oh.
McKelly, why don't we give them the summary? But I mean, if you're saving her from seeing her father's death, probably you're not just going to stab her.
Right.
Completely gratuitous. Why don't we give them the summary of this chapter?
Yeah, I could summarize this up in about one sentence, but we'll do it in long form. Well, as we had hoped, Yoren did take Arya with him. Sporting her fancy new hairdo, courtesy of Yoren and his knife, the guards didn't even glance at her as she passed through the gate in Yoren's group of 30 recruits, finally leaving King's Landing. As she rides away, she hopes the Blackwater rush rises up and floods the whole city. But then she remembers that her sister Sansa is still in there and changes her wish to just getting back to Winterfell.
Arya has 2 new names. Yoren named her Arya, but the boys in his recruitment party have dubbed her Lumpyhead because of Yoren's haircut. 2 of the boys in particular pick on her relentlessly. As the youngest and smallest in the group, she's an easy target. Former dyer's apprentice Lummy Greenhands, so dubbed by his trademark green-dyed hands, and Hot Pie, dubbed so as a former roving pie salesman, notice that she's carrying a nice sword and assume that she has stolen it.
She's been ignoring the barbs to this point, but calling her brother Jon a thief, as he gave her needle, is the final straw. Despite the attempted intervention of an older boy who they call the Bull, who is clearly trying to defuse the situation and protect the littlest one, trouble ensues. She shouts back at the boys, but that only incites more attention from them. When Hot Pie tries to take the sword off her, she springs into action, beating poor Hot Pie so badly with her wooden sword that Yoren has to come and rescue him. Yoren takes her off alone into the woods and has her drop her drawers.
He whacks her across the back of the thighs with a stick 3 times, drawing blood. The punishment now over, he breaks some news to her. He wasn't even supposed to be at the Sept of Baelor for Ned's execution. He'd already rounded up the men and boys for the trip back to the Wall and loaded up the supplies to leave town. But a man came to see him with a boy and a purse of coins. The man said that Ned was going to take the Black and be going with Yoren. That's why he was at the Sept, but obviously something didn't go as planned.
Arya immediately realizes that the hitch in the plan was King Joffrey himself. Over the days following the incident, Hot Pie had to be transported by wagon. Lami steered clear of Arya entirely, and Arya had to walk since her backside was too sore for riding her donkey. One night later, after staring at the red comet until she falls asleep, she dreams of home. She misses her mother and all of her brothers. However, it's Jon she misses the most. So all it took was a haircut. Yeah. Oh, the wasted time. How did she not think this one through earlier?
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
It'd be very difficult to cut your own hair as well as Yoren did. Although, given that she got the nickname Lumpy Head, I'm not sure he was that good.
Right. It appears he does not have a license in cosmetology. No. What is it called when someone cuts hair?
That's cosmetology.
Is it cosmetology? I was thinking that was
something to do with space.
Yes. So I thought we'd go through the collection of nicknames that Arya has so far, as she's starting to gather a small little group here. One of her original nicknames back in Winterfell was Arya Underfoot, which was coined by Fat Tom but picked up by the entire Stark household guard. And Hullen, when he was dying during the kind of the Lannisters taking over the Tower of the Hand, the storming of the Tower of the Hand, if you will, by the Lannisters, she ran into Hullen. She thought he was dead, but it turned out he wasn't, and he called her Arya Underfoot even with his dying breath. So it must have really stuck. And she did like that better than Arya Horseface, which is the other nickname she had from...
Yeah. You can get out from under someone's feet, but it's difficult to get away from your own face.
Right. Yeah, Arya Horseface was coined by Jane Poole, and in the chapter, I think it was actually the first Arya chapter, Arya describes herself in reference to this Arya Horseface nickname as having her father's long, solemn face. So she didn't seem to care for that one much, but apparently she cared for it more than being called Lumpy Head, which a little bit, I mean, the hair's going to grow back. So
that's true.
True.
And of course, Arya is the other one she's picked up as well. Although you've missed one actually in this list, because at one point in the chapter, Hot Pie accidentally calls her Lumpy Face.
Right, he does.
And Lummy is forced to correct him. No, it's Lumpy Head. You see, because of the hair.
Her face is not lumpy.
So we meet Lummy Greenhands. He's the dyer's apprentice. His skin is permanently stained. He was caught stealing. Hot Pie, his mother was a baker before she died, and he pushed the cart around shouting hot pies. He's chunky, apparently.
Yeah. Apparently he was dipping into the wares that he was also selling. I'll take that one, but coins. It's got a bite missing from it. Apparently, I'm wondering if everyone in this ragtag group of recruits that are going north with Yoren, I'm wondering if all of them had to pick nicknames, because so far we've got Airy, Lumpy Head, which is Arya. We've got Lummy Greenhands, Hot Pie, and in a minute we'll meet a character named Bull. So
the Bull, yeah, that's true.
So everyone's got a nickname. Maybe it's a requirement.
You might not know this actually, but when I think I took the first draft of the notes for this one, and all the way through I called him Pot Pie.
I did see PP, yes.
Oh, you did?
I changed it to HP.
I had to go back and change it all. I must have missed that one. But I was like, what the hell happened to me? So Lummy is joining because he was caught stealing.
Right.
So basically he was one of the dungeon rats. But Hot Pie was just an orphan.
Yeah, right.
Who basically is voluntarily signed up, I guess. But
yeah,
it seems like he probably has some baking skills, you'd think, from his mother.
Right.
And she obviously had a place where she could bake.
Good
I
point.
wonder if he tried his hand and
maybe
just wasn't very good at it.
Even like a baker's assistant in the Red Keep or something, When Arya ran through the Red Keep running away from Mare Trant, she was knocking over people all through the kitchen. So, maybe he could have gotten a job there. Or maybe he just really likes the adventure of going off to the Night's Watch. He saw Yoren and thought, I want to be like that guy.
that smelly guy.
But Yoren is leading them into some rather dangerous territory here.
They're basically marching into the teeth of the war.
Yeah, marching right into a war zone in the Riverlands. I was thinking that surely word has gotten into King's Landing about the war in the Riverlands, even to commoners, even to small folk. So you'd think he's aware of what's happening. So maybe he feels safe because the Night's Watch, it's known, it's in the laws that the Night's Watch don't take part in the disputes of the realm. So he can march through there and say, hey, I don't have anything to do with this war. Let us pass.
Yeah, but I know what you're thinking now. There are definitely some parties up there who won't pay any attention to those rules.
Exactly. I'm not sure I would trust the Mountain to play by those rules.
Especially because he's taking resources. I mean, that's what the wagons, there's 5 wagons in this train, and they're full of things that are needed at the wall, which would also be very handy for an army who was short of equipment and
Solid point. Now, the King's Road doesn't get too close to River Run, which would be really great if it did, because unbeknownst to Arya, a portion of her family are in River Run. But it does get rather close to Harrenhal. So the Starks and company really have to hope that nobody realizes who Arya is until this group is well past River Run.
Right. Harrenhal, in fact.
Yeah, sorry. Harrenhal. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking that, at first I thought, well, funds would unlikely allow for them to take a ship back, which seems like a safer route at this point with the war-torn Riverlands. But then I remembered that when the man came to give Gendry to Yoren, he also gave him a bag of gold coins, or coins of some variety. So, maybe he could have used that to get them back via sea instead of land. Yeah.
I've thought that several times, actually, that that you could stop at White Harbour and then go via Winterfell and then on to Castle Black.
Yeah, once you get to White Harbour, you don't have to worry about the war.
Right. But even if you weren't actively trying to take Arya back to Winterfell, you could just go all the way to the wall.
Right.
Eastwatch by the Sea.
Yes, you could.
Would be... that seems like a much easier way to travel. And basically, the people you've got who are prisoners have no way to escape if they're on a ship.
Right. Exactly. Solid point. You could actually go all the way to Eastwatch by the Sea and then send a raven to Winterfell and say, hey, we've got Arya up here. Because when they're up that far north, they don't really need to worry about gold cloaks or Lannisters or anything.
Exactly, yeah.
So they could send an escort.
But all of this is just like basic how Yoren should do this. And regardless of the whole situation, it would just be easier.
Right.
I mean, it feels like if you come to King's Landing to ask for prisoners, they should put you back on a ship. They should say, there's a ship headed that way. But actually, why would a ship go to Eastwatch? The only reason a ship would go to Eastwatch is to take resources to the Night's Watch. And so maybe that's a very rare occurrence.
Yeah.
The ship is actually
I guess they could charter, a ship to take them there. And
I guess with 30 people, that's worthy of a charter, a small ship.
And one thing that Yoren doesn't know is that Mormont had put Alliser Thorne on a ship heading to King's Landing to show King Joffrey the hand of the White to try and convince him to help out. So had Yoren known that, he could have maybe just waited for Alliser Thorne to get there and then take that ship back up to...
You presume it's an Eastwatch ship. It may be a ship from
Summer
Isles that happen to just be there. But yeah, I take your point.
Another thing I realized as I was thinking about Yoren, he's kind of the Forrest Gump of the Stark family. You know how Forrest Gump was always like meeting famous people and getting into situations that he really just kind of bumbled into? Well, Yoren has.
Oh yeah.
He was with
Cat,
Jon.
Right?
He was with Jon and Tyrion on their way
Yeah.
north of the Wall because he was bringing Rast and another guy from the Fingers. He was with Tyrion at Winterfell on Tyrion's way back down, where he would have met Robb, Bran, Rickon. He was at the end of the crossroads when Cat took Tyrion hostage, and he was in Ned's chamber when Arya was telling Ned all about what she saw in the dungeons, and then he was at the Sept of Baelor when Ned was killed. So he's like following all the Starks. He's met every single Stark.
Except Sansa.
Well, yeah, he would have seen Sansa on stage, but yes, you're right.
Oh yes, he even saw her. Yes, because he was at the beheading. Yeah, so she was there.
So,
wow, that's amazing. I hadn't thought of that. He really is sort of like at every Stark occasion.
Right. He just keeps bumbling his way into Stark family business.
It's like one of those horror movies where like the photographs, he's always in them.
Right.
That guy. That's really interesting. And it's interesting that that all of this is without making him a POV character.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
He just
normally to get that much screen time you need to be a POV character, but he just happens to. He just bounces wherever Yoren goes. That's where we're going next.
That's where the action is. He's the harbinger of action.
So he's basically he's seen Tyrion like 4 separate occasions.
Well, he went north. He went up to Castle Black, north from Winterfell.
I guess he hung out with him.
Yeah, and then came.
Then he
back
bumped
down
into him
with
again.
Him.
Oh, he came back down with him. He didn't bump into him at Winterfell. He was with him all the way to Winterfell.
He was with him all the. He accompanied him to Winterfell.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I guess he accompanied him all the way to the inn at the crossroads because they were both going that same direction.
Right. I kept thinking he was bumping into him, but he was with him the whole way down.
Yeah, they were travel buddies.
Until he lost him. Yeah. So this party that's heading north, they have 3 of the 30 are chained up in a cart. Arya thinks that either Yoren's... either Yoren is afraid that they're so ruthless that they would murder their way out of the Night's Watch, or they're under instructions. That's what I wondered about. Maybe when they're emptying the dungeons, the dungeon master doesn't really care. He's like, yeah, sure, take them to the Night's Watch. But maybe he said, but I never want to see that one, or that one again, so make sure they get to the wall.
Right.
If the others escape, why should I care? But those 3 are bad news.
Yeah. But if they're that bad news that they have to be put in a cell, like a traveling, rolling cell for the whole way from King's Landing to Castle Black, I mean, I know that the Night's Watch need men, but are they so desperate that they have to take these 3? And if he tells Arya that her father gave him the pick of the dungeons, if these are part of the pick, I would hate to see who he left behind. He was like, I'll take these 3, but not that one.
He is recruiting for a fighting force, so a little bit of psychosis is not a bad thing, perhaps.
Yeah.
If you can keep it under wraps.
Except for that they don't, to this point so far anyway, they haven't really had anything to fight. So they have the wildlings to fight, but...
let's not rake these coals again, but yes, I take your point.
So I was also wondering about these folks in this traveling party, the ones that came from the dungeons anyway. How many of them were unfairly thrown in the dungeons thanks to one of Joffrey's whims? Because we saw in Sansa's POV just how he was throwing people left and right into the dungeons for things that had no business. Like he threw that one woman into the dungeon simply for having loved someone who Joffrey had deemed a traitor, or that was generally deemed a traitor. He had her thrown in the dungeon. So I wonder just how many of these folks were just regular old small folk who happened to come across Joffrey on a whim when he decided to throw him in the dungeon.
I'm going to guess the 3 in the that are chained up are not those.
Right. That's a safe bet, yeah. I also find it odd that she mentions there's 3 of them, but she only describes 2 of them.
Yeah, one of them's missing a nose and the other one's fat.
The other one's fat, bald, has weeping sores and like face, pointed teeth. Like his teeth are shaved down or something.
I think, not to spoil the TV show, but I think the TV show, you see those two. The third one is hooded and just sort of hides his face.
Oh, maybe that's why she hasn't described him yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the book came first. Maybe that's why they did that in the TV show, because they didn't know what this guy looked like. Yeah.
Yes.
So Yoren tells the tale that the man came with a purse and a boy, saying that Ned was going to take the black. So we suppose that this must be Varys, because the only person who we know was in on the discussions between Ned and Varys is Varys.
Right.
It wasn't Ned. So.
that seems likely. It was either I agree, it was either Varys or someone on Varys's bidding. They're doing Varys's bidding. Because not only was Varys part of the person brokering this deal between the Lannisters and Ned, but we also believe it was Varys that paid the apprenticeship fees for Gendry to become an apprentice of, what's it called? A smith apprentice, a blacksmith apprentice.
Yeah. And so this, so the bull is clearly Gendry, because he's carrying the helmet that we know that Gendry built.
Right.
And so he's obviously the boy that was brought to Yoren by this character who seems likely was Varys or Varys's appointee.
Yeah, it certainly fits. So, I mean, she describes him as a boy with black hair and a bull helmet. He seems to be quite fond and proud of.
Right, but he didn't wear it. He just carried it and was proud of it. So it's not like it was his helmet. Clearly something he worked on.
He also tells Arya that the comet looks like a newly made sword straight from the forge, which means he knows his way around a forge. So all that put together seems pretty obvious. We're talking about Gendry here.
So the fact that he was brought to Yoren, so it seems like Varys has always been kind of a fairy godmother to Gendry a little bit here. So he took him, and now he obviously fears for Gendry somehow. He wants to. I wonder why. I mean, or is it a fear for him, or is he trying to do something? Is he trying to install him somewhere so that maybe one day he can reveal his birthright and raise him up?
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. It's either that or erase his birthright by putting him in the Night's Watch. Because once he takes the black, any birthright he had would be wiped out. So he's either trying to save him by getting him out of town and erasing. I mean, as a natural born kid, he doesn't really have much in the way of birthright anyway. But whatever he has, what little birthright he might have, would be wiped out.
But you can see from Cersei's perspective, he doesn't have much rights, but he literally has more rights than Joffrey, because he is Robert's son, whereas Joffrey isn't. So
that is a solid point. Yes, exactly. Joffrey has 0 birthright because he wasn't.
He's not 0 because he is the son of the queen, but typically you also need to be the son of the king. So
yeah, it usually does help. Of course, now both of Gendry's parents are dead, so it would be really hard for him to prove that he is Robert's son, other than looking at him and saying,
which is
he looks
apparently
like
what everyone does.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah, but you're right. Is he maybe hiding him from Cersei simply because he's afraid of what Cersei might do to, there's the rumor going around that Cersei had the babies that Robert fathered in Casterly Rock.
Yes, we did talk about that. Yep, I remember. So she's not averse to it, and like you said, the kid literally has more of a claim than Joffrey. So if she could rid herself of the bastards and rid herself of the brothers and rid herself of all the splitters, then Joffrey could be on the throne, and there would be no one left to challenge him.
Now the question is there any chance Yoren knows who he is?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem likely. You wouldn't think that would be announced to him.
And does Gendry know who he is? I mean, because obviously people with influence are moving him around. Is he curious enough to ask why?
2 hands of the king and the king's brother have come to visit him. You'd have to start to get the idea, hey, wait a second. I might be someone more special than I think I am.
So, if Joffrey had stuck to the plan and Ned had agreed to take the Black, would Joffrey have really trusted Yoren to take Ned to the Wall? We talked about this way back when it was happening. We talked about this a little bit. That, I mean, Yoren doesn't take part in the politics of the realm, but if he was walking through the north with Ned Stark alongside him and a handful of Starks came out and said, "Hooey, give him back," I'm not going to take part in the politics of the realm, you can have him,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I trust Ned. I think Ned might stick to his word. As he drives past Winterfell, just nod and keep on going. But if I was a Lannister, I think I would want an honor guard, or I don't know if you call him an honor guard, but I would want a Lannister guard going with them to make sure he got to where he was going.
Right. Not just got there, but actually took the vow.
Because, it's like, it's like that scene in Austin Powers where, do you remember this scene in Austin Powers where they have Austin and Elizabeth Hurley's character, I can't remember what her name is, but they have them tied up in this room, and they've got these sharks that were supposed to have laser beams on their head, but they didn't, so they were just sharks, and they were slowly lowering them into the water, and they just shut the doors, expecting, and Seth Green character, who is Dr. Evil's son, is like, well, I'll just shoot him right now. I'll go get a gun. We'll shoot him together. And he's like, no, what? We'll just put him in an overly elaborate situation and assume that it worked out. That's kind of what they'd be doing here. We gave him to this one random dude and said, hey, take him back to Castle Black with you.
What are the rules for taking the Black? Could Ned make his vows there and then? I mean, obviously he's got enough training already. He doesn't need to go through basic training. Could he make his vows in front of Yoren?
Right.
Because that would help me. If I was a Lannister, that would help me feel a lot better about it.
Yeah, and as we learned watching Jon, the ones who are there in lieu of criminal punishment have no choice but to take the Black. So I don't know if they have to say some pre-take the Black oath beforehand or what, but yeah. But still, okay, he says this vow in King's Landing. You still can't trust that when he gets to Winterfell, he's going to
your own moral code as a Lannister, you would not trust him.
Right, exactly.
So Gendry sees the comet as a sword hot from the forge. Arya sees it as ice dripping with her father's blood.
Ice being the sword ice, not the sword frozen water.
Yes, Ned's own sword.
Yes.
She did not see that. That's just imagination, because Yoren did protect her from seeing it, but it's not hard to imagine that that's what would happen to a sword that was used to chop someone's head off.
Yep. So Arya, the chapter ends with Arya dreaming about being back with her family, and she can't wait to get to Winterfell to be with them. She misses all her brothers. Like we said in the summary, she misses all her family, but she specifically very strongly misses Jon. In this chapter, you really get a sense of what he meant to her and what it appears that she meant to him. And it's very sweet. She wishes that they could somehow get to the Wall before they got to Winterfell so that they could have a nice reunion and all that. But
if they'd taken a boat to Eastwatch.
Oh, yes, right. I
wish.
Well, boy, Yoren really messed this all up. But she doesn't necessarily have to get all the way to Winterfell to see her family, because as we know, Cat and Robb are in Riverrun, which is probably less than halfway to Winterfell, I would think.
A little bit less than halfway. Yeah.
Maybe around there.
I would think just south of the Neck would be about halfway. The Twins might be about halfway.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, without looking at a map. The river run's not on the King's Road. They'd have to go west on the river road at the at the crossroads area. And of course, they don't know right now that her family is there. But it's a long road between where they are now.
They could find out.
And the end at the crossroads. They very well could find out, wait, your family is there.
Or by the same token, her family could move.
Right.
We're not sure what their next step is, So.
That's a good point. Yep, that could happen as well.
One thing, we've come to the end of our notes, but one thing I think we didn't really mention is, I think in the summary we said that Gendry sort of tried to stop the fight. He actually protected Arya in the fight a little bit. At one point, Hot Pie attacks her with a rock from behind and he warns her. And I think he chats to her a little bit afterwards. So there's a little burgeoning friendship there between Arya and Gendry.
Arya.
You got some background? You've done well. You've done well to extract background out of this.
There were 2 words in this chapter that I could make background out of. So the 3 men that are chained up in this traveling cage, Arya says that they were from the black cells in the dungeons underneath the Red Keep. So let's talk about what the black cells are. Although construction of the Red Keep was originally begun by Aegon the Conqueror and continued by his son Aenys, it was King Maegor I Targaryen that really took construction well beyond the original scope for the Red Keep. And one of his calls was that the dungeons should have 4 levels. The uppermost level has cells with high narrow windows. This is where common criminals are confined together. The second level has smaller personal cells without windows, but there are torches in the halls that cast light through the doors, which are made of bar. This level is for highborn captives. The cells on the third level are called the black cells. They are smaller than those on the levels above and have doors made of wood so that no light can enter them, hence the black cells. Up until recently, they hadn't been used in years. Of course, Ned was held in one of those black cells. So I guess maybe these 3 were neighbors of Ned at one point.
All right.
The lowest level of the dungeons is used for torture, and it's said that it's safer to go through the 4th level of the dungeons in darkness, because there are things down there that you wouldn't wish to see.
That is actually interesting background. I did not know this, and the fact that they weren't really used under Robert is kind of a slightly good sign.
Yeah.
Robert never seemed like that great of a king, but at least he wasn't actively torturing and holding people in pits.
Right. That he left that to his pretend son.
Yes.
You notice there's since then at least 4 people in the black cells.
Yeah. But from their physical description, and you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, I feel like they kind of belonged in the black cells.
Yoren certainly seemed to think so.
Yeah. So, comparison with the television show, this scene was actually co-opted into the last episode of season 1, but It's all pretty close. The only difference is that it all happens in King's Landing before they set off. The scene ends with them setting off, but she has her contretemps with Lommy and Hot Pie before they ever go anywhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Yoren does remind her of her new name. He tells her to keep her head down and to pee in the woods. Yoren mentions that he has 20 men going north. In the book it's 30, the cost of extras. There's a bit less violence. The scene in the book is quite violent. I mean, she beats him until he loses control of his bowels.
Right.
Yes.
I was wondering how you were going to handle that description. You did well.
Arya gets pushed to the ground, but as Hot Pie reaches for the sword, she jumps up with needle drawn and threatens him. She's already killed one fat boy, she could do it again. Hot Pie keeps backing up until he bumps into Gendry, who further threatens him. Hot Pie and Lommy scarp her, and Gendry admires Needle, and he says it's Castle's forged steel.
Okay, and, which is something that Arya said in the book.
She asks why he's in the Night's Watch, and he says that he was an armourer's apprentice and the armourer got sick of him, so here I am. So either he's dissembling, which doesn't feel like a Gendry trait, to be honest,
right,
or he himself doesn't know why Varys made the move that he has done.
Uh-huh.
Since Hot Pie isn't beaten, there's no spanking from Yoren, so that doesn't happen.
Okay.
So, just one question I had for you here, just about that, while I was thinking about the TV show. And you'll have to help me if this was in the book. In the scene in the TV show, when Ned arrives at Baelor Sept, he sees Yoren.
Uh-huh.
And he directs Yoren sort of with a look to Arya.
TV show only, not in the book at all.
TV show only. Okay. And I wondered if Ned was expecting something to go wrong.
Right.
Because why would you send Yoren to Arya if you were expecting to take the black and be...
unless it's to maybe, bring her in. She's out in the wind right now.
Yes, that's true.
Maybe he's figuring, make her look like a boy, and we'll go back together.
If the stars align, they could go back together. Yeah, I can see that.
You should describe that scene, though. It's a good scene. I know you've seen it more recently than me, where what he says to Yoren to direct Yoren's attention to her and all that.
Yeah, so as Ned arrives at Baelor Sept, he sees Arya clinging onto the statue of Baelor, I think, isn't it? Of Baelor
she's
itself.
like up in his legs.
Right. And as he's sort of being marched to where he eventually gets beheaded, he passes close by Yoren, and he says to Yoren, Baelor, Baelor. And Yoren sort of looks confused for a second, turns around, sees Arya, who he had met earlier,
right,
clinging to the statue. And so he goes over there and gets there just in time to prevent Arya from seeing Ned beheaded.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. It's a good thing. I don't think we it's possible we may have already had that discussion in that chapter, Arya's chapter,
maybe, yeah.
But I don't think that we did. So I thought that was a good scene.
Yeah. Pedantry. I've got a little bit here, actually. In addition to the recruits, Yoren is bringing back supplies. I'll quote, hides, bars of pig iron, a cage of ravens, books, paper, ink, sour leaf oil, medicine, and spices. Now, some of all that makes good sense to me. Spices, they were typically found in the warmer regions down here at King's Landing. Medicine, well, get it where you can. But I do have two that I object to. Hides. The Night's Watch has a vast tract of land south of the Wall, the Queen's Gift, which belongs to them. And they're free to hunt north of the Wall, too. Surely they can provide them. They're undermanned. They don't need that many. I mean, it feels like they could provide. And plus, the hides in King's Landing, it's warmer down there. The animals aren't as furry.
Yes. I see what you're getting at there, yes.
It just seems a bit strange to be taking hides there. And the other one is the bars of pig iron. Okay, you can only get raw metals from where they're found, right? And maybe they're not found up in the north. But iron is heavy, yeah? It would break the axles of trucks to take a big chunk of iron up to the north, over 1,000 leagues.
Right, yeah. Like at least halfway, if not 3/4 of the way across the continent.
Right. So again, you've got to use a boat. Or if the iron has to come from here, which I don't believe, I think you can get iron in the north for sure.
You would think
and
so.
And if you can get iron in the north, that's where you should get it from, because otherwise, just the cost of transportation is just going to be debilitating. So
right. Buy those. Buy the carts in the north when you buy the iron in the north. Because you don't need it. And it's not like you need it between King's Landing and Winterfell or wherever. You could, travel lighter until you get there and then buy that stuff.
And that's an interesting point, actually, because Yoren didn't have anything to sell, did he?
To sell, like...
When Yoren came to King's Landing, he didn't have anything to sell.
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know.
So he's bought these carts here in King's Landing too. He could have used that money to spend on a ship.
Exactly.
That's what he should have been doing.
I had one quick little piece of pedantry that's just... It's a very dangerous game that Yoren is playing here. He is bringing 30 mixture of orphan boys and hardened criminals from King's Landing all the way to Castle Black. That's like months of all of them sleeping together and traveling together. We're not talking about a group of Ned Starks here, what are the chances that one of them doesn't slit his throat in the night and they all just take off or gang up on him, and they can just walk off? What's he going to do if all 30, say the orphan boys are too scared to walk off? Obviously, Arya's not going to. So 25 of them just decide to just walk off. What's he going to do to prevent them?
The orphan boys may not be too scared to walk off now, but they're volunteers. They can walk off anytime they want. As it gets every step north, it'll get colder. They might start to change their minds. I might just take my chances.
Right. Yeah, I just thought I would expect him to at least hire sellswords or some sort of guard to keep the numbers in check here.
Yeah, that's a good point. News and notes.
News and notes. So, I read a cool article this week that kind of fit with this episode, so I thought I would tell you all about it.
Do tell.
So, Sean Bean was interviewed, who happens to be 61. I was a little bit taken aback. I picture him as either Boromir or Ned Stark, neither of which are 61 in my head. So, anyway, Sean Bean was interviewed by Entertainment Weekly, and he talked about what was going through his head during Ned's death scene. And there's a joke in there somewhere, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
It was more than just he thought about getting his head chopped off. He said it was first he was thinking about the horror and disbelief that Joffrey had changed his mind. And then resignation and realization that he was seeing his daughter Arya for the last time, because in the TV show he sees Arya. He doesn't see her in the book. And he felt that mix of all four of those feelings gave the scene, what it needed to make it feel realistic. But he also said that that scene they filmed all day. So it was hard to keep these feelings of meeting your death, intact all day. But he did say it was really hot that day, so it helped. And but he also thought that the other actors, Lena Headey and the kids, were fantastic. That helped as well. But if you notice, right before Sir Illian swings ice in the scene, Ned whispers to himself, and people have speculated for years what he said, because you couldn't make out. All you could see was him whispering something to himself.
Yeah.
But there's been tons of speculation on what it was. Some thought that he said Valar Morghulis, which is a term we'll learn later. Some thought he said, I kept my promise. Others thought he was talking to Bran, maybe because of the dream with Bran. I don't even think that was in the TV show. So anyway, but what actually happened was Sean asked someone what an appropriate prayer would be for someone with Ned's beliefs. And he took that info and made a private, personal prayer that, to my knowledge, he has not shared with anyone.
How interesting.
So
You see, that's how actors can bring something more than just, reading the lines to a part, that kind of thing. Because he clearly thought carefully about this whole situation and created a huge sort of mystery for everyone about what he was actually saying.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's conclude. So Arya has escaped King's Landing, as she'd hoped. She appears to have made a friend of sorts in Gendry, but she has certainly made an enemy of Hot Pie.
At least he's going to be scared of her.
Well, nothing else. Yeah.
He might be an enemy now, but he also might not mess with her. Either that or she's got to sleep with one eye open. One or the other. Yeah. But this chapter, like you said earlier, that nothing really happened in this chapter. It felt like this little chapter had two reasons for being. One was to fill us in that Ned was supposed to take the black and that it was Joff that made the executive decision to change it, which we had speculated, but now we had it confirmed in this chapter. And two, to let us know that Arya isn't the only child of a lord masquerading as an orphan in this particular party here.
Hot Pie? No,
yes,
Gendry.
No, Pot Pie.
Hot Pie.
I really think,
But to be fair to Gendry, he isn't masquerading as an orphan. He truly is an orphan.
He is an orphan, yes. He is actually an orphan, yes. But aside from that, you're right. There's not a whole lot to take away from this chapter.
Yeah. So how does the presence of Gendry affect things? If nobody knows who he is, then it can't possibly make any difference. But this being Game of Thrones, this being a Song of Ice and Fire, I should say, somebody knows, and that will come out eventually. And Gendry's clearly a pawn in a wider game to which he appears to be unwitting. Maybe he knows more than he's letting on, but he's certainly acting like someone who thinks he's been turfed to the Night's Watch because the Armourer didn't care for him anymore.
Right. Yeah, he's either a pawn or he's been being hidden to protect his life.
Right, but in either way, he's being treated like a pawn.
Right, yes, sure.
They're not telling him why it's happening.
Yeah. So you know chess better than me. So that's how you know what pawns, how pawns are treated.
They're just a little hapless.
This group is, like we said earlier, headed right into a war zone, so they're going to have to be quite careful here. Yeah.
Arya needs to find better ways to channel her anger. When Yoren's berating her. And the scene where he spanks her we perhaps didn't cast that in the true light. He is trying to teach her without actually trying to hurt her, but he has to sort of go through the motions of it. But he's actually sort of like being sympathetic. But he does make the point that Hot Pie isn't Joffrey. You can't exact your revenge on third parties.
Right. Of course, if he hadn't been picking on her, she would have just left him alone. So, you know.
That is true. That is true. But she didn't act like someone was picking on her slightly. She acted like she was killing her.
Yes. Yes. Once she got going, she just let loose on all. Hot Pie took all of the brunt of her frustration and sorrow and dismay.
But it was also smart of her to make the connection that if Ned was headed to the Night's Watch, then the only reason it didn't happen was Joffrey Baratheon. That he's the instigator of this, and he's 100% to blame for her father's death.
Yeah.
Which I think that one will burn in Arya.
Yes, I believe you are correct. And I think she might not have noticed that in her worry, grief. And remember, she was slashing at people as she was trying to get. Yeah. She might have been a little bit distracted to notice that everybody was shocked by the announcement that Joffrey made. Right. So it seemed pretty clear to everyone around that Joffrey was going out on his own here, but she may not have picked up on that.
And Yoren seems like a fairly good egg, you know. He
does.
He's rough. He's going to treat her like a unpleasant uncle, but right. He's got her best interests at heart. He's trying to save her.
Yeah, you don't imagine he's going to be like old Nan and sit around and tell her campfire stories and stuff. But he did seem...
Well, actually, he might do that.
Might. They're going to have a lot of nights together on this trek across
channeling
the realm.
Worst bits of old Nan, he might do that.
Yeah. Yeah, he did seem a little bit concerned about the fact that she was in pain after he whacked her 3 times with the stick.
Yeah.
He said, choose some sour leaf, it'll help the sting and stuff. But he did also say, next time you take a stick to one of your brothers like that, you'll get twice what you got, which is... Both of them know that's not true, because both of them know she's not going to take the black. But, I guess
for the journey. Yeah. For the journey, she's there.
They're brothers for the journey.
Yeah. All right. As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhall, because we have not yet been banned. Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Not yet, anyway. And if you wouldn't mind going out and leaving us a 5-star rate and or a fantastic review.
How could you not?
We would be forever in your debt and very thankful for that.
We would. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.